Welcome, everybody, to our August 2023 meeting of the Metropolitan Washington Old Time Radio Club. And it's lovely to see so many of you here. And we've got quite a long evening planned. But are there any visitors to the meeting tonight? I think I understand. Recognize all the names on the call so far. So it's nice to have Ron and Margie back. It's good to see you. Welcome back. So without any further ado, I think I will pass the meeting over to our own Frank Morgan and let him do the first 15. You have the power now, Frank.
Okay, thank you.
Use it wisely. There, now. You can scooch over a little bit more. There we are.
But I need to.
And while Frank's getting his ducks in a row, I encourage everyone to mute themselves during the presentation.
Yeah, do that.
You get better kind of thing. And if you can't mute yourself, I can. And I'm happy to do it.
Okay, let's get going here. All right.
Oh, very good, Frank.
Okay. All right. Tonight's program is called Lest We Forget. And there are actually 3 Lest We Forget series. Lest We Forget the American Dream, Lest We Forget Stories to Remember, and Lest We Forget the Great Americans. The Lest We Forget American Dream features stories that were anti-discrimination themed, dealing with acceptance and tolerance for racial and religious differences. Lest We Forget Stories to Remember dealt with similar issues. Lest We Forget the Great Americans told stories relating to American presidents and other important figures in American history. Here's an ad that for that evening, Lest We Forget was going to be about Franklin Roosevelt, and it was a 2-parter, so tonight couldn't do a 2-parter. So I've chosen to do a program on Jane Addams. In my youth, I enjoyed reading books about the historical figures that shaped the United States, the presidents, the pioneers, inventors, and the social workers, such as Jane Addams. Broadcast during World War II, the Lest We Forget programs were designed to be a patriotic theme. They were created by the Institute for Democratic Education in association with the Boston University Radio Institute, and were dedicated to Americans about the type of America in which we want to live. All 3 of the Lest We Forget series were syndicated, so it makes it difficult to date any of the broadcast episodes. Tonight's program was written by Eugene Hurley. It was produced and directed by Milton Brown. The program's announcer is David Ross. Before he became successful in radio, Ross had been a newsboy, a reporter, an actor, and a teacher. There he is. The prior picture, that was Hull House, founded by Jane Addams. So this is David Ross. Now, the lead in tonight's program is Wendy Barry. And though better known for her work in film, Ms. Barry did have an extensive radio career. She was a cast member of The Wonder Show, also known as The Jack Haley Show, from 1937 to 1939. And there were some better known names who were also cast members on that show, Lucille Ball and Gail Gordon. Ms. Barry was an assistant on the Star for a Night program and one of the quizmasters on Detect and Collect. Ms. Barry became a 1950s disc jockey on The Wendy Barry Show on WMGM Radio in New York City. She went on to host a syndicated radio interview show in the mid-1960s. So here's a picture of Jane Addams with some of the kids at Hull House. And here we go with Lest We Forget the Great Americans.
Frank, is there supposed to be audio? Because I'm not hearing anything. Is it working on the audio?
Yep, there we go.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Let's go back a second.
Men are created equal. Today, our story is about a lady who devoted her life to making these 5 words come true, and in doing so brought light to a world where there was no light.
Tony's a dirty Italian! Tony's a dirty Italian!
Yeah, you're just a rotten mitt!
Who says I'm a rotten mitt?
I say you are! Get out of here! Get out!
Hey, gang! There go the Greeks! Let's mobilize them! Hey, you! You, go to the synagogue?
Yeah, I go to the synagogue.
Okay, tell the rabbi about this thing!
That's the way things were in my neighborhood when I was a very young boy. It was Greek against Italian, and Irish against Jews, and Protestant against Catholic. I lived not only in a slum of poverty, but a slum of hatred and distrust. We didn't regard ourselves as Americans, though we lived in the heart of Chicago, but as a narrow outpost of the European countries from which we had fled to America for freedom. Our streets were tangled with the invisible barbed wires of intolerance and race hatred and loathing of another man's religion. And then she came. You want to know who she was? Her name was Jane Addams, and she, more than anyone else, taught us how to live to be Americans together. But let me tell you how first I met her.
Could you tell me who owns this old house?
I don't know. Some American.
Oh, aren't you American?
Nah, I'm Italian.
But weren't you born here in Chicago?
Sure I was. But that don't make no difference. I'm Italian Catholic. I don't like Protestants or Jews or Americans.
What's your name?
Tony Ducato?
Well, Tony, I don't know what you think, but I think you're an American. I think we're all Americans, no matter where we came from or what our religion. Maybe if you thought that way, too, you wouldn't have that, black eye.
Hey, you talk like Father D'Amato. What are you doing down this part of town anyway?
I'm going to move here, Tony. Right here in this house.
Here?
Mm-hmm.
What you gonna do, open a saloon?
No, not a saloon. I'm going to open a house where all of us, Greeks and Italians and Irish and Jews, can get together and solve our common problems.
If you think you're gonna get all them people in one house all together like that, you're crazy, lady.
No, Tony, I don't think I am. I'm going to prove to you, to all of you, that your prejudice can be wiped out through common understanding and education. That's going to be my job.
I was that boy. I never forgot the lady in the fine clothes who had come to look at Hull House. Sometimes I dreamed of her. She was like nobody I had ever seen before. And I remembered what she told me about Americans, about all of us, even the people in the Halsted Street slums of Chicago being Americans too. One day, Hull House and Jane Addams came to Halsted Street to stay. And then...
Jane, our window, they've smashed it.
Wait.
Why don't you move away from here, huh? We don't want no rich people down here.
You want from us, you strange American woman?
We not care go to your house. We not want you here.
Come away. They don't know anything else.
If only we could break down the wall of distrust between them and us, Ellen. If one person from the district would come to Hull House and discover that we're ordinary people just like them. If one came, then others would come. And still others until everybody in Chicago came to know us. We'll keep the door open, Ellen. Sooner or later they'll come to know us. And when they do, our experiment will point the way to the rest of the world.
We had called Jane Addams names, and in our ignorance had tried to drive her away. We didn't know that she had not come to us a patronizing charity lady, but as a teacher, anxious to show us the way to a better world. We did not know that. We knew nothing but hate, poverty, nothing but the reality of our dark, steaming slums and the worm-eaten food that we bought with the pennies of our wages. But we couldn't drive Jane Addams away. She had come to Halstead Street to stay. And then one day, the wall of distrust between us began to crumble.
Just a moment, I'm coming.
Hey, lady, could you help me? Me and Mike was fighting in the street and I hit him and I think I killed him.
Let me see him, Tony. No, you didn't kill him. Have you called his mother?
Yeah, I sent one of the kids after him. Is he going to die, lady?
Help me carry him onto the couch. Tony, why did you fight with him?
Because he come over to the Italian side of the street.
Oh, I see. Well, run and get some wet cloths from Miss Starr.
Okay.
Where's my poor boy? They've killed him. That's what they've done.
He's going to be all right. Now, just be quiet.
Yes, it's right. What do you boy do to my bambino? I'll show you what I like. Dying been doing this.
Now, listen, both of you. Be quiet. Listen. You two ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Whatever your children are doing is because of the hatred you've taught them. They're not responsible for what they do. But you are. This has got to stop before somebody's killed. Now, tomorrow night, I want all the mothers, yes, and the fathers, too, in this neighborhood, to be here at Hull House.
The next night, the neighbors were there. Italian sat beside Irish, and Greek beside Russian. Jews, Catholics, Protestants. We were all there, listening to Miss Addams.
All of you, no matter what your nationality or religion, are dependent on each other. Many of you think that I've come here as a rich busybody to uplift you. I haven't. I've come here to live as a neighbor, to teach you to live as a neighbor, and in doing so to create a better life for all of us. Some say that you have brought to this country only prejudice and poverty. I say that you have brought hopes and dreams that will make America a richer and better country. Last of all, I want you to know this. Beginning now, we will gather here at Hull House regularly. Our mutual goal is harmony and the betterment of our living conditions through harmony. I'm determined that we shall achieve that goal together.
From that night on, the doors of Hull House saw thousands of us entering with despair and leaving with hope. We were heartened by the knowledge that no problem was too big for Jane Addams to solve.
Mr. Ward, I've come to ask you to stop hiring children to work in your sweatshop.
What's the matter with that, Miss Addams? They're paid well.
A penny an hour, when they should be going to school and out of doors playing.
Look, I'm in business. If I stop hiring them, other manufacturers will keep on doing it and drive me out of business. No, Miss Addams, it's no use arguing. I'm going to keep those kids at work.
We'll see, Mr. Ward. We'll see. Governor Orchard, I demand that you outlaw child labor. Look, our children are tomorrow's citizens. Are you going to let them rot their youth away in sweatshops for a penny an hour when they should be learning how to grow up in tomorrow's leaders?
Miss Addams, All right. We'll fight for legislation. It may be political suicide for me to do it, but by George, we'll fight. Yes, there'll be a law to protect those kids, Miss Addams. We'll see to that.
It took time. It wasn't easy. But Jane Addams won in the end, as she always did. And when the law governing child labor was passed, there was another fight. She fought for and won a better playground system for the children of Chicago. And the people learned from Jane Addams and helped her carry on the fight against injustice.
Miss Addams, the people, they tell me to come to you. They say you're going to know how to help us. Mr. Goldberg, he's my neighbor. some men, they come and beat him up just because he's a Jew. We would like to have a meeting at the Hull House to tell these men that we, all the neighbors, are here. And if they're going to fight the Jews, they fight all of us. Will you speak for us, Miss Addams?
Of course I'll speak for you, Mr. Bocelli. And you'll speak for Mr. Goldberg, too. All of us will. What kind of neighbors would we be if we didn't?
There was another fight, too. The fight against illiteracy. The fight for a chance to study and learn, so that in learning, the poor could go forward to make a better world. Through her courses at Hull House, great artists, scientists, and businessmen were given their first chance to learn a profession.
Around the rugged rock, the ragged rascal ran.
Yes, at Hull House, the people from foreign lands learn American speech. Babies of working mothers are cared for in modern nurseries. Youngsters bury their heads in the books of a great library, and... No, you can't hear that. A deaf young boy is attending a class in lip reading. No one has been forgotten. Jane Addams saw to that. Long years have passed since Jane Addams came to Hull House. That house is famous now because of what it has done for the slum people of Chicago. And all over the country, other settlement houses are working for the betterment of the people and fighting bigotry and misunderstanding as Jane Addams dreamed that someday they would.
The children of the human family have been kept too long apart. The selfishness of their leaders is too long imposed upon their ignorance. They must be brought together. They must be educated. They must learn to know one another.
Jane Addams died May 25th, 1935.
Yes?
Miss Addams, we come to see her for last time.
You come in.
I'm very sorry. You see, there are many of us come to see Miss Addams.
She would want you to be here. She's in there. You may go right in.
Thank you. Do not cry, woman. Miss Addams, her not just one people, her not just one religion, her all peoples, all religions. Miss Addams, her never die.
As long as there is hope, of all men of all religions and all nationalities, walking the earth in the peace and freedom that will come with tolerance and understanding, Jane Addams will never die. For Jane Addams lived in that hope, and her work will not be forgotten.
This program was brought to you by the Institute for Democratic Education in cooperation with the Boston University Radio Institute. Listen in again next week to another program in the 10th series of Lest We Forget These Great Americans.
Thank you,
Hey.
Frank. That was really excellent.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The series is very interesting. There are a few there are a few others that you can get online if you care to listen to any more of that series.
That's just great. Does anyone have any questions for Frank? Quiet bunch tonight. Everybody's on mute. Maybe they don't know how to unmute. Ooh.
Well, was it rather unusual to confront racial conflict that directly at that time?
I mean, I guess she did. Whether other, how many others did or were willing to, you don't know for sure, but certainly she did.
John Reiser, did you have a question or observation?
Well, I was very interested in that particular program. I came from a town in northern Michigan in the 1930s when I was a young fellow. Our town had about 10,000 people, but it was divided up, and actually there were areas which we called French Town, German Town, and so on. And the people in those neighborhoods were all of the same nationality. Swede Town were all Swedish people. The people gathered in separate by nationality. And so we didn't think too much of it. I think we all got along, but it was interesting that those towns had that characteristic. They were called French towns and so on. But when World War II came along and the military draft and so on, that the distinction completely broke down by the end of World War II. So, but anyway, it was very common, and I imagine there were a number of other communities in the up to the 1930s that were divided by nationalities. And I'm sure that the large cities like Chicago and so on were also divided up by nationality.
In fact, my grandmother, who raised me, was living in Chicago or just outside of Chicago in the 1930s. And she had a Polish cook and a German Fräulein for the children. And the cook during World War II, these two ladies would really go at it hammer and tongs. And my grandfather made the observation that World War II was being fought in his kitchen. But in fact, my grandmother would refer to the different, there were indeed in Chicago dedicated areas where you had clusters of different nationalities. And I mean, I don't know about today because we moved away when I was 7, so I'm not as conversant with current day Chicago, but I imagine that many of those kind of neighborhoods still exist, but not with quite the same kinds of divisions that existed back in, the mid 1930s.
Well, I'm going to suggest that the immigrants tended to live together, especially if there were language issues. You were much more comfortable living with others who spoke the same language. And I still think we would see that in certain areas when the Vietnamese came over, they lived together. When, the Spanish speaking, they tend to stay together. And it's the second generation or the first generation born here who speak English and the other language that, then start, as John said, after World War II, to spread out into other neighborhoods.
Well, and also, I mean, if you look at Boston, you look at New York City, there are, there's an area that's designated Chinatown. There's an area that's, the Italian neighborhood. I mean, there are these different neighborhoods. My mother-in-law, who lived in Manhattan for a number of years, really liked the food, the produce, and the food products that she could find in the Italian section of New York. And so she'd take her car and tootle on down there and do her grocery shopping and then bring everything back home. So, and I believe that still exists in Pittsburgh. I think big urban areas, there is a comfort level to that.
There's a Little Italy in Philadelphia,
right
on South Street.
Right. So even though many have been assimilated already, there's still that kind of cultural comfort, I think, in being together.
Well, people that came from the older countries, one of the things they also were concerned about the nationality. I know that when I was in high school, I wanted to date a girl who was whose parents were Greek, and I couldn't date her because her parents would only let her date someone who was Greek.
Greek. Yes, yeah. There've been some funny movies about that kind of thing. Well, if no one has any more questions, Frank, before we ask Sally to strap on the quiz, you wanted a few minutes?
I do, if I may.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to.
You may have to just talk and see if they can. When it goes back to.
I'm going to take us back to, let me just make sure I'm sharing the audio. Okay, I am. Taking us back to Kilroy's on June the 10th and the quiz of that afternoon. Okay. There we go. All right. The very first question was, come on. All right, it wants to aggravate me. In any event, the very first question was, what was the name of Jack Benny's tenant? Now, I know my quizzes can be difficult at times, but I figured what could be an easier way to start a quiz off than a question about the Jack Benny program? Everybody listens to Jack Benny. I mean, I could have asked a question like, what was the given name of the Lone Ranger's sister? Now, sister-in-law, I'm sorry, that would have been a tough question. But the Jack Benny question, well, here we go. This is annoying.
Number one. What was the name? Number one, Jack Benny's tenant. Jack Benny's tenant. Mr. Billingsley. You don't remember this? Well, that was his friend. Mr. Billingsley. The guy was hilarious.
Who played him?
He was a very funny character. I don't
Gotcha. We'll take your word for it.
All right, there you heard it. Michael Hayde said, who played him? And I kind of laughed it off. Well, I wasn't going to let it bother me. And everything was fine until on the ride home. I dropped off Fred, and then it started. I heard Michael's voice. Who played him? Well, all the way home for the next 2 hours, I heard it. Who played him? Who played him? When I got home, I knew if I was ever going to get to if I was ever going to get to sleep, I had to do something to take the edge off. So I had a double Coca-Cola with ice, and I finally fell asleep. But still, in my sleep, I heard it. Who played him? Who played him?
Who played him?
I woke up screaming. I had to find out who played the part of Mr. Billingsley. Well, Michael Hayde, ladies and gentlemen, I found out who played the part of Mr. Billingsley. He's really interesting and interesting enough. I'm going to take a minute or so to share some information about him. His name was Edmund Boulogne. And in 1936, at the age of 25, as a former medical student turned writer, Ed Boulogne and Bill Morrow were hired as the writers for the Jack Benny program. Now notice I said hired as the writers for the Jack Benny program, not hired as writers. Here's a picture of Boulogne with Bill Morrow. Boulogne's the fellow on the right.
The Jack Benny program is written by Bill Morrow and Ed Boulogne.
Well, in 1943, Boulogne left to go to Hollywood, and on the screen you'll see a list of the movies which he wrote the screenplays for. I'll just mention a couple for anybody on the phone. Buck Benny Rides Again, Love Thy Neighbor, My Favorite Brunette, Road to Rio, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, The Lemon Drop Kid, The Sad Sack, Paris Holiday, GI Blues, and Donovan's Reef. They're all attributed to Edmund Boulogne.
Well, it's Mr. Billingsley. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Benny. Entertaining your friends, I see. Yes. Yes, won't you join us? No, thank you. I was just going out. That's too bad. Say, that's quite an outfit you're wearing. Yes, I'm Napoleon. Well, nothing like dressing up on Halloween. Oh, is this Halloween? Goodbye.
Pick it up.
Okay, and then in the second one, hopefully it'll play. Jack and Mary are about to leave for the studio.
Oh, Jack, here comes your boarder.
Oh, yes. I wonder why he's wearing that turban. Hello, Mr. Billingsley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Benny. Digging in your garden, I see.
Yes, I thought I'd get started early this year.
I do hope you plant pistachios. They're delightful.
But, Mr. Billingsley, pistachios are nuts.
Well, who isn't?
Oh. Oh, I didn't look at it quite that way.
Well, goodbye, Mr. Benny. I'm going out for a little stroll.
Goodbye. Oh, by the way, Mr. Billingsley, you look just like a Hindu. Is that a turban wound around your head?
No, that's a bed sheet. I slept like a top last night.
Oh, well, we've got to run along to the studio. See you later, Mr. Billingsley.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh, thanks. I never touch it.
I wish I could figure him out.
Okay, so that is Mr. Billingsley. And Michael, I want to thank you for asking the question because you've added to my OTR knowledge and hopefully, added to yours a little bit tonight. And keep the name Edmund Boulogne in mind because you may hear Sally mentioning it sometime in the future.
Thank you very much, Frank, for the additional education. That was our bonus for tonight's meeting. Moving right along, we're at that happy time when our intrepid teacher, Sally Stevens, gives us some tests. And Sally, let me make you co-host so that you can make all of that happen and launch the poll and everything else.
Excellent.
All right. You
I
wanted
hope you
power, you got it now.
I hope you will. Oh, did you make? I don't see the poll in the my options here, Wendy.
Should more.
Where?
No, I said. Just bang.
Well, while Wendy is continuing to make sure she gave me all of the power I so need.
All right, you are co-host.
Ah, there it is. Thank you. Thank you, the power, the power. I need the power.
Mwahaha.
I hope all of you have been doing your homework and studying over the summer. I don't care if it's summer, you're all in summer school. So none of you have passed this year. You're all in summer school. That's saying a lot. So here we are.
Maybe it's the teacher's fault.
Oh, we'll discuss that comment after class. Probably in the principal's office.
I'll be waiting.
Excellent. All right, class. I hope you have your pens and your papers ready. Oh, I love how Joni is so prepared. Wendy is ready. John is. Oh, excellent. John, I see that pen. Very nice. Thank you. Kelly is ready to go. I love to see all these students ready with their materials. Oh, I just love it. This class just warms my heart. All right. Now, I'm going to launch the poll and read the questions twice. But remember, I've never seen them either, which is probably why Frank tries to make them so challenging for me to read. And I hope we don't, at least now I know how to say Edmund, whatever his name was. I already lost it, but it could have been Benoin, Benoin, Benoin. Who knows? It could be the new She Who Will Not Be Named. We never know. All right, enough stalling time. No more checking over your notes. It's time for the quiz, kids. And this month, Frank has prepared one for us in which it is titled, May I Have an OTR Word with You? Launching poll. You may answer on the poll faster than I will read the questions. That is your prerogative. Number 1. When the crook told Richard Diamond that his partners brought the soup, what did they have with them? A. Campbell's chicken noodle. B. Mrs. Nussbaum's matzo ball. C. Pasquale's escarole. D. DuPont's explosives. When the crook told Richard Diamond that his partners brought the soup, what did they actually have with them? This is going to be a challenging quiz. Number 2. Before their home in Wistful Vista, Fibber and Molly at times slept in a flivver. What is a flivver? A World War I pup tent. B, a lean-to in the park. C, an inexpensive car. D, a cheap boarding house. Before their home in Wistful Vista, Fibber and Molly at times slept in a flivver, which is what? Number 3. On Crime Classics, if a man had on derbies, what were they? A, handcuffs. B, leg irons. C, old-fashioned ball and chain. D, a matching cravat and pocket square. On Crime Classics, if a man had on derbies, what were they? And no, you are not allowed to use a dictionary. That would be cheating. Number 4. When you went to see a peeper, what was his profession? A. Photographer. B. Detective. C. Spy. D. Oculist. When you went to see a peeper, what was his profession? Number 5. Gracie Allen told George Burns that when Jack Benny was younger, he had been a plunger. What is a plunger? A plumber's assistant. B, a free spender. C, a diver. D, a moocher. Gracie Allen told George Burns that when Jack Benny was younger, he had been a plunger. What is a plunger? Number 6. When Horatio K. Boomer told Fibber he had a ticket for a short beer, what was a short beer? A half-size glass of beer. B, a weak beer. C, a cheap beer. D, a free beer. When Horatio K. Boomer told Fibber he had a ticket for a short beer, what was it? Number 7. Axford was always going to catch the Green Hornet, calling him a scalpeen. His distortion of the word rapscallion. Exactly what was he calling the hornet? A common crook. B, a rascal. C, a dangerous person. D, a rogue. Axford was always going to catch the Green Hornet, calling him a scalpeen, his distortion of the word rapscallion. Exactly what was he calling the hornet? Number 8. When Titus Moody said he needed to take a glim with him to his barn, what was it he needed? A candle. B, a flashlight. C, a match. D, a lantern. When Titus Moody said he needed to take a glim with him to his barn, what did he need? Number 9. If you took away the crook's gat, what had you taken from him? A, his sap. B, his girl. C, his shiv. D, his gun. If you took away the crook's gat, what had you taken from him? Number 10. Mr. Peterman employed Elaine on Seinfeld, wrong era. But if you were looking for a Peterman in old-time radio, what were you looking for? A hitman. B, a second story man. C, a safecracker. D, a con man. If you were looking for a Peterman in old-time radio, what were you looking for? Bonus points if you can use all 10 of these words in a logical sentence later in the evening. I will leave the poll running in the background so that you can answer the questions during the main program, and then we will go over the answers after the main program. No changing your answers by looking things up on dictionary.com, children. Not use the internet to solve our problems.
Could you read them again, only this time slower?
Absolutely not.
Thank you, Miss Stevens. And now stay tuned for the answers after our regularly scheduled program, which is being brought to you by Frank Morgan this evening. It is the second half of his presentation on Don Ameche on the radio. So take it away, Frank. You might want to unmute while you're,
Thank you. Okay, here we go. Just a quick recap. Don Ameche was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin to immigrant parents. He jumped around from college to college with the intention of becoming a lawyer, but he left law school to pursue an acting career. His efforts on stage in New York didn't go well, and he ultimately returned to Kenosha. While there, he received a phone call from Bernardine Flynn, whom he had met while acting in college plays. Flynn is best remembered as Sade on Vic and Sade. Flynn informed Ameche of tryouts in Chicago for a program called Empire Builders. Ameche won the lead. His major break came a bit later when he won the lead role in another Chicago-based show, the First Nighter program. He also worked in various Chicago-based shows until the First Nighter program moved to California and Ameche moved west. When we left Don Ameche last month, he was the announcer, straight man, singer, and skit performer on the Chase and Sanborn Hour featuring Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. He had just been completely embarrassed by the Adam and Eve skit, which he had been forced to perform that evening with that evening's guest, Mae West. During his time on the Chase and Sanborn Hour, Ameche would often engage in conversation with Edgar and Charlie, usually more with Charlie.
The makers of Chase and Sanborn Coffee and Tender Leaf Tea present Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy and Don Ameche.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Chase and Sanborn Coffee and Tender Leaf Tea time, so drink up and smile a while with Edgar Bergen, Ray Noble and his orchestra, Dale Evans, the sportsman, our special guest, Paula Goddard, and Charlie McCarthy.
Good evening, Mr. Ameche.
Now, listen, none of that Ameche stuff, McCarthy.
Oh?
And when Paulette Goddard comes here this evening, I hope you'll be on your good behavior.
Well, you know me.
Yeah, that's why I mention it.
Oh, I get it.
Charlie, now Don wasn't kidding when he said he hoped you'd be on your good behavior. No, because I insist on it, too.
Yes, Mr. Bergen.
All right. Now, what are you going to do when Miss Paulette Goddard arrives?
Get rid of Ameche. Oh, I see.
And then what are you going to do?
Get rid of you.
Oh.
Paulette and I have so much to talk about.
Yes, well, never mind, young man.
What?
Just start behaving yourself right now, because Don is going to sing.
Well, that ought to get rid of all of us.
Gee, it's all fine and dandy, sugar candy when I've got you. And I only see the sunny side. Even trouble has its funny side. When you're gone, sugar candy, I get lonesome, I get so blue. When you're handy, it's fine and dandy, but when you're gone, what can I do? It's all fine and dandy, sugar candy and Chase and Sandy. And I only see the sunny side. Even trouble has its funny side. When you're gone, I get lonesome. When you're handy, it's fine and dandy. But when you're gone, what can I do? It's all fine and dandy, sugar candy when I've got you. When you're handy, it's fine and dandy. But when you're gone, when you're gone, when you're gone, what can I do?
Ameche loved to sing, and this show gave him the opportunity, and whenever he could, he would sing on this show, and you'll hear about others in which he sang as well. Now, when his health permitted, another regular on the Chase and Sanborn Hour was W.C. Fields. And if Fields wasn't interacting with Charlie and Edgar, Ameche was his foil. Now, in the opening sentence, you'll hear Ameche make an immediate flub as he talks to W.C.
Well, how you feeling, Don? How you feeling, Bill?
I'm feeling all right, Bill. Which one am I?
I don't know. I guess you're you.
I don't feel too well, Don. On my way over here, a little nipper tried to set me on fire.
Is that so, Bill?
Yeah, I struck a match and tried to burn my nose. Mistook it for a firecracker.
Oh, well, that's an awful way to celebrate the 4th, Bill.
Yeah, it's even a terrible way to celebrate the 1st. My brother was shot on the 1st, Don.
Oh, he was, Bill?
Yeah, trying to open his own safe.
Well, how was that?
He thought it was his own safe. He walks in his sleep, you know. He went over to the bank and started monkeying around. The constable on the beach...
You mean the hospital, Bill?
You want me to tell this story, Don?
Oh, sure, Bill. All right. You mean the morgue?
Oh, now you're going to tell me what I mean.
Please, Bill. Will you please go on?
Then please be quiet, Don.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Your brother walks in his sleep and he was shot by a policeman.
Oh, you know the story then.
No, Bill, I don't know the story then, and I don't know it now. Now, please, will you go on,
listen?
Bill? All right, sure, Bill.
All right. My father was summoned immediately to the cemetery.
Oh, are we in the
When he
cemetery now?
No, the morgue.
Well, Bill, please, let's keep this thing straight. Your brother and your father were...
Why do you take such a keen interest in my family affairs, Don?
Well, I mean nothing personal, Bill. I'm just interested in your story, that's all.
Oh, so you're not interested in my family at all? Just want me to tell about them. Then you go and gab it all over the country. Is that the idea?
Oh, now, please, Bill, I'm exhausted.
Would you like a little drink? I have a couple of bottles of scotch here. Always carry 2 quarts with me for medicinal purposes, Don.
Of course, Bill.
Yeah, I don't want to make the judge and the doctor look bad.
All right, that's Ameche with W.C. Fields. And Ameche continued with Bergen and McCarthy until December of 1948. And while performing on a weekly radio program would be enough for many performers, Ameche was doing a lot more. Between 1936 and 1945, Ameche starred in 38 full-length motion pictures. Now, for our friends on the phone, I'll just read off a few of them. 1936, Sins of a Man. 37, 50 Roads to Town. 1938, In Old Chicago, and Alexander's Ragtime Band. 39, the big one, The Story of Alexander Graham Bell, The Three Musketeers. 1940, Swanee River. 41, That Night in Rio. 42, The Magnificent Dope. 43, Something to Shout About, and Heaven Can Wait. 44, Wing and a Prayer. 45, Guest Wife. In addition to being good box office, Ameche was highly sought after as a guest on numerous radio shows. He was a favorite of Cecil B. DeMille and the Lux Radio Theater. During the first half of the 1940s, Ameche appeared on no less than 3 Lux Radio productions each year. Again, I'll read a few of them for people on the phone. A Free Soul, Border Town, Manhattan Melodrama, Bedtime Story, The Magnificent Dope, Happy Land, Lucky Partner, Magnificent Obsession, and Guest Wife. Now, as I said, Ameche got along very well with Cecil B. DeMille.
This is a very happy occasion for the Lux Radio Theater because it's reunited a team of stars who've made many fine pictures together. Loretta Young and Don Ameche. Loretta was here very recently, so this return engagement proves how much we like her.
Thank you, Mr. DeMille. I'll come every week if you'll ask me. And I guess you know how much the Lux Radio Theater really owes to Don.
Indeed I do. He's played some fine plays here.
I think you're walking into something, CB.
Well, I was thinking of Don's scientific accomplishments. Now, look what he did in that last picture we made together.
Certainly. He invented the telephone.
Uh-huh.
That was the forerunner of the microphone. Don, you made the Lux Radio Theater possible. Then there's that other picture, which you wrote with all those wonderful songs, like Swanee River.
Oh, yes, it's really amazing. What do you do in your new picture, Don?
Nothing much, Loretta. Let's forget it. CB, what play are you doing
Don, tell us the name of your new picture.
next? The Magnificent Dope. Look, CB, what play do you have next week?
All right, Don. I'll rescue you.
Now, Don Ameche was always happy to be in the public eye. So in late 1945, Ameche was the master of ceremonies on 2 major broadcasts. The first was a 2-hour CBS Thanksgiving broadcast, Victory Salute, the celebration of the end of World War II. Performing on the program were radio stars Fibber McGee and Molly, Francis Langford, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, Jimmy Durante and Gary Moore, Cass Staley, and others. The second show he emceed was the 1945 Elgin Christmas Greeting. In the cast were Bob Hope, Red Skelton, Jack Benny, Alan Jones, Bob Crosby and his Bobcats, Larry Storch, Vera Vague, Ginny Sims, Alan Reed, Mel Blanc, and Arthur Q. Bryan. In 1946, he again served as Master of Ceremonies on CBS's Thanksgiving Day program, which again included Jack Benny, Durante and Gary Moore, Res Skelton, Vera Vague, Peter Lind Hayes, Mel Blanc, Desi Arnaz, Burl Ives, and Margaret Whiting. Just a month or so before that 1946 Thanksgiving program, Ameche began a new radio series sponsored by Dreen Shampoo and called Dreen Time. Ameche did a little of everything. In addition to serving as MC, he would sing, trade jokes with other cast members, perform in dramatic sketches, and even take part in commercials. The show was met with mixed reviews, and as a result, a little more than a month after its premiere, the format of the show underwent a quick change. Ameche wanted to do more dramatic spots, but the sponsor didn't want to do that opposite the Theater Guild on the Air program, which was a dramatic show. So instead of dramatic sketches, the Dreamtime audience was introduced to comedy sketches with characters created by Philip Rapp. The Bickersons. The principal characters were John Bickerson, played by Ameche, Blanche Bickerson, played by Frances Langford, and Blanche's always scheming brother, Amos, played by Danny Thomas. Langford had been known as a singer and had performed some comedy with Bob Hope during Hope's wartime travels. While there was some hesitancy about her in the role of Blanche, her performance showed she was born to play the part. For Danny Thomas, the Bickersons was his introduction to a national audience. Now, for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with the Bickersons, John believes he suffers from insomnia, but he doesn't. And Blanche is a hypochondriac, but she also wants John to pay more attention to her. And you'll get a sense of that in the audios coming up.
The Bickersons have retired. As usual, Mrs. Bickerson tosses restlessly, while her husband John, insomniac extraordinary, presents this audible testimony of his constant wakefulness. Listen.
For the love of heaven, what is he doing? John! What's the matter with you? You're making the most frightful noises. What's the matter?
What's the matter, Blanche?
Are you in pain?
I got a terrible headache. Haven't slept a wink.
You've been sleeping like a felled ox.
Headaches.
You wouldn't have such a headache if you didn't take so many cocktails before dinner. Why do you do that, John?
Always do it.
Why?
No good to eat on an empty stomach. Put out the lights, Blanche.
The lights are out. But how would you know anyway with that sleep shade on?
Well, something's flashing in my head. Oh.
Take an aspirin.
Okay. Feel better already.
How can you chew those things like that? Wash it down with something.
All right.
John Bickerson, you washed it down with bourbon.
You lied to me. You got the lights on.
Yes, I'm going to keep them on. Sit up. I want to talk to you.
Please, Blanche. I can't sit up. My head will fall off. Why do you always have to talk in the middle of the night?
When else can I talk to you? You come home for dinner and bury your head in the paper, never a word out of you, and you tell me you have to go to bed early because you have insomnia.
Well, I have. It takes me hours to fall asleep.
It took you all of 30 seconds tonight.
Well, this was a good night. Good night.
John. I went over to see the Marvins' new baby this afternoon. It's a beautiful child. Do you know their first one is over a year old?
I hope so.
He's been walking since he was 8 months.
He must be awful tired. I am, too.
Children are such a blessing. It's wonderful to watch them grow up. You'd be surprised how many childless couples are adopting children.
I better have another aspirin. Boy, have I got a headache.
John, don't you miss the patter of tiny feet around the house?
No, I don't, Blanche. Children are wonderful, all right, but you have to be able to afford them.
All this talk of adopting... What the devil is that?
What's what?
That. Put the lights on.
John,
Blanche, don't tell me that you went out and...
it's only a dog, silly. I got a little puppy.
A dog? What do we need dogs for? Where's the aspirin? What did you get a dog
Now,
for?
don't get hysterical.
Where is the little beast? I can hear it, but I can't see it.
He's right there in the bureau. I've got him in your shirt drawer.
You put him in there with my shirt?
He won't suffocate. The drawer's open.
Blanche, you know I'm allergic to dog hair. It gives me sinus trouble. Where's the aspirin?
You're just a big hypochondriac. You imagine those allergies like you do your insomnia.
I tell you, I'm allergic to dogs. They make me... See, get rid of that thing. He'll whine all night and keep me awake.
The man said he'll keep quiet if you give him one of those worm pills.
Well, where are they?
On the night table by your bed.
How do you give a dog... Where?
They're on the night table by your bed.
There's nothing here except the aspirin.
The aspirins are in the medicine cabinet.
Well, how can they be in the... Blanche, what have I been eating? No wonder my headache won't go away. Why do you do these things to me? Send for a doctor.
Don't carry on so. If they're good for a dog, they won't hurt you. Go to sleep.
Go to sleep, she tells me. Here I am dying from dog poisoning. My head is splitting. And she knows I'm allergic to dogs. Hides the aspirin and makes... Shut up! I don't know. Get up so early. Never get another wink of sleep as long as...
John. Gesundheit.
Thanks.
I can see how much sleep I'm going to get tonight. We'll have to get rid of the puppy.
And now you're talking.
I want you to take him down to the dog pound.
Okay, I'll do it on my way to work.
You go in the opposite direction.
I'll go out of my way.
You say it, but you won't do it. You better take him now.
What?
Go on, get up. Take the puppy to the dog pound.
Blanche, are you out of your mind? It's after 2 in the morning.
They're open all night. Go on, get up and take him.
Well, I never heard of such a thing. You know, I went to bed with a splitting headache, and I had to take a dozen worm pills to fall asleep.
You take the dog to the pound quick enough if Gloria Gooseby asks you to.
How do you always manage to work the conversation around to Gloria Gooseby? Shut up!
All right, now that's an introduction to them. Now you heard them mention the name Gloria Gooseby, and you'll understand the comic tension between the Bickersons regarding Gloria Gooseby in this clip. You'll also hear Blanche the hypochondriac and the Blanche that wants John's attention.
John, I have indigestion. I've never been so sick in all my life.
All right, Blanche. I'm awake. Now, what's the matter with you?
I don't feel good, John. Call the doctor.
You don't need the doctor. I'll handle it. Where does it hurt you?
Right here in the pit of my stomach. It's a shooting pain, and it comes about every 5 minutes.
How long does it last?
At least a quarter of an hour.
How can it last a quarter of an hour if it comes every 5 minutes?
Don't yell at me. I'm sick. If I say the pain lasts a quarter of an hour, then it lasts a quarter of an hour.
Okay.
I think it's that dinner we ate at the Gooseby's. The fish disagreed with me.
It wouldn't dare.
I never want to eat there again. Every mouthful was poison, and the portions were so small.
Why, you ate like you were condemned.
Well, you have to be polite when you go to dinner. I wish we hadn't eaten anything. I'm suffering, so call the doctor.
Oh, now don't get hysterical. It's just indigestion. I know how to treat it. I'll fix you some hot ginger ale and oatmeal.
Hot ginger ale?
Make a new man of you.
John Bickerson, I don't want any of your insane remedies. You'll treat me for indigestion, and I'll probably die of liver trouble.
Listen, if I treat you for indigestion, you'll die of indigestion. Now, do you want me to help you or not?
Not if you're going to yell at me like that. You wouldn't yell at Gloria Gooseby if she got sick.
Now, don't start with Gloria Gooseby.
I saw you two at the dinner table playing footsies.
Footsies.
You were so flustered when she smirked at you, couldn't eat.
I was not flustered.
Then why did you put gravy on your ice cream?
I always put gravy on my ice cream. I love gravy on anything, and you know it.
A likely story.
Ah.
And the gown that woman was wearing. She ought to be arrested. I think she purposely swallowed that fish bone so you could stroke her back.
I didn't stroke her back, I patted it. And I'd have done that if she hadn't swallowed the fish bone. I mean, if she hadn't been wearing that gown.
I don't know how Leo stands for it. He's such a wonderful man, and Gloria's always playing stick around him just to get sympathy. A lot you care what happens to me. Every time Gloria gets a headache, Leo hugs and kisses her and fawns over her. Why don't you do that?
I'm never there when she has a headache.
I mean, why don't you fuss over me?
Now listen, Blanche, you're not sick and you know it.
Well, I'm depressed. You're going...
All right, so that's Gloria Gooseby. Now, this next one, I talked about Blanche's brother, Amos, and this audio deals with Amos, played by Danny Thomas. And of course, Danny Thomas is better known for his television work and also his charitable work for St. Jude's Hospital.
So tired.
Broadcasting system.
So tired. Well.
Broadcasting system.
So tired, and I have to make a 7 o'clock train. That means I have to get up before 6.
Why do you need so much time?
Well, I have to pack my suitcase, don't I?
You haven't got a suitcase.
Oh, I have to. I bought a brand new one yesterday. It's in the closet.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. I put it there last night.
I took it out this morning.
What?
Amos borrowed it.
Oh, Blanche, he didn't. You didn't let that weasel take my brand new suitcase. I've never even used it.
Don't scream so. You can carry your stuff in a paper bag.
Paper bag? My suits will get all wrinkled.
No, they won't. Amos borrowed them, too.
Now, look, Blanche.
I see no reason for you to carry on like this, John.
Blanche.
Amos is going on a sailing trip with some very important businessmen, and he won't hurt your silly old suitcase.
Blanche.
He has to have something to bring the fish home in.
He's going to carry fish in my suitcase, and I have to put my clothes in a gunny sack.
Well, stay home, then.
I can't stay home.
If you leave me here alone in this horrid house tomorrow night,
All right. I'll call Amos. I'll have him come over and stay here till I get back. Put the lights on. Honest, Blanche, if I don't go on this trip tomorrow, I'm liable to lose my job.
Hello?
Amos, this is John.
Hi, Jocko. What's new?
Say, I want to ask a little favor, Amos. I have to go out of town tomorrow, and Blanche is afraid to stay here alone. Could you come over and spend the night?
What's in it for me?
What a chiseler.
Is it worth a double sawbuck, Jocko?
Okay, $20.
And all the bourbon I can drink?
All the bourbon you can drink.
And can I bring a couple of friends over?
Bring some friends.
Take a note. You won't back out, Jocko.
I give you my word of honor.
Okay, I'll be over tomorrow.
Wait, Amos, when you come over, you might bring my new suitcase with you.
I might bring it, but I won't. Because I already hocked it. Good night, Jocko.
Ooh, how I hate that man. You see what you make me go through just because you pretend you're scared to be alone?
I'm not going to be alone.
What?
Mother's coming over to stay for the rest of the year. Good night, John.
Oh,
Ameche and Langford used the Bickersons to perform charitable work. For example, in 1947, at a $1,000 a plate dinner, they raised $191,000 for the Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital. In addition to his charitable works, Ameche was also known for his strong religious faith. And when Family Theater came to radio in February of 1947, Ameche was the star of the opening show. At the end of this clip, you'll hear him voice one of the two mantras of the show.
Broadcasting system presents the Family Theater, starring Loretta Young and Don Ameche, with Jimmy Stewart as your host. More things are wrought by prayer than this world dreams of.
Now, the second phrase associated with the show at the end of the show was the family that prays together stays together. In 1949, Ameche spent a brief time with comedian, singer, and longtime entertainer Jimmy Durante on the Jimmy Durante program. And while Durante would sing a song or two each week, his program was more or less a half-hour situation comedy. Ameche's role was that of Durante's sidekick and stooge, but he played it well.
Well, big league baseball season opened this Tuesday, and like guys all over the country, Jimmy and I could think of nothing but baseball. In fact, for the past days, we both set out to get in a little practice, but there was just one little trouble, my wife. One afternoon, while I was waiting on the front porch for Jimmy to pick me up, she finally cornered me.
Donald Ameche, are you going out to play baseball with that Durante again?
Yes, dear.
Oh, you think more of playing baseball than you do of your own family.
Oh, that's not true.
Baseball, baseball. What about our 6 children?
As soon as we get it up to 9, we'll play them. But there's no harm if a fella goes out and plays a little ball.
How do I know that's all you do? Especially when you're with Durante. Maybe you meet a couple of girls and take them to a movie.
Oh, don't be silly, darling. I haven't been to a movie in months.
Then how about taking me to the Bijou tonight? They have that new Vaughn Monroe picture, Singing Gun.
Oh, I saw that last night. Now, I came back from the ballpark early and you weren't home, so I went to a movie alone. Say, come to think of it, you weren't home the last few nights before that either. Where were you?
Well, I don't see why I have to explain my actions if you can't explain yours any better. The way you always run around. Everywhere Durante goes, you have to go.
Well, what's wrong with that?
I stay home while you follow the cry of the wild gnome.
Now, don't change the subject. I'd still like to know where you've been the last few nights. And Oh, here comes Jim in his car. Now, we'll talk about it later. Hey, Jim, it's kind of crowded on this side. You better park across the street.
Nonsense. I'll park right between these 2 cars. Here it goes. That makes the space now to park the car. I'm also a devil in a supermarket with my wire basket.
Jim, you should have parked across the street. There's more room there.
But that would mean I'd have to walk across the street, and that's too dangerous. I did that yesterday, and a car hit me and knocked me 500 feet in the air. Then they arrested me.
What for?
For leaving the scene of the accident. That was pretty funny, huh, Mrs. Ameche? Pretty funny.
Oh, what a revolting person.
Jim, maybe we better call it off for today. You see, my wife doesn't like the idea.
Don't be silly, Don. We'll take her along. Come on, Mrs. Ameche. You could play baseball with us.
Me? Play baseball?
Sure, you're still in shape for it.
Well, thank you.
Come on, Don. Let's take your wife out on the field and swing the old bat.
How can he mean things so sweet and make them come out so sour?
Mr. Durante, you are an unmitigated, uninhibited bore whose aberrational idiosyncrasies are exceeded only by your insipid cognizance of social amenities.
Wait a minute. Do you mean to say I'm an unmitigated, uninhibited bore whose aberrational idiosyncrasies is exceeded only by my insipid cognizance of social amenities?
Yes. You are an unmitigated, uninhibited bore whose aberrational idiosyncrasies are exceeded only by your insipid cognizance of social amenities.
She wins. I could never make that trip again.
What I want to know is how did he ever make the first one? Look, dear, I'll be back at 8 and we can have dinner somewhere together, huh?
At 8? Oh, well, I won't be home at 8.
Stepping out on your sprouts, huh, Mrs. Ameche?
Yeah, stepping out your... Darling, where are you going today?
I don't think I have to explain anything to you. I'm going upstairs now. If Mr. Durante wants something to drink, show him to the medicine chest.
What's she up to now? Women, they cause all the trouble.
Yeah, women. Sometimes I think this world would be better off if there was no such thing as women. Just men and children. There's a flaw in that statement, but I just can't seem to find it.
I can't understand what my wife has been up to these last few nights. Gosh, it couldn't be another man.
You can never tell. I knew a fellow who suspected his wife of going around with other fellas. So to get her away from them, he moved to a lonely house way up on the top of a high hill. But he was still suspicious.
Why?
He kept meeting too many guys who were out of breath.
Okay, that's Don Ameche on the Jimmy Durante show. The show went on to find a way to make Mrs. Ameche jealous of Don, and they went look for a couple of women that they could use to do that. From 1947 in June to June of 1948, Ameche was a cast member of The Old Gold Show, which is essentially a continuation of the Dreamtime program. He was also a guest occasionally on Tallulah Bankhead's weekly gala called The Big Show. And thanks to Carl Shadow, I got these work cards, which show the last radio efforts of Don Ameche. The mid-1950s brought another phase to his career. After traveling the country performing in 3 light musicals, Ameche headed to New York and won acclaim on Broadway in 2 shows, Cole Porter's Silk Stockings and Walter and Jean Kerr's Goldilocks. But as I say, he wasn't finished with radio, and in 1958, he did Don Ameche's Real Life Stories. Ameche was the star and narrator of this weekly series, which presented a complete show each week. A frequent guest on the program was Alice Frost, who's best known for her years as Pam North on Mr. and Mrs. North. For a half hour each weekday morning, Ameche would work on pre-recording the show. This allowed him the time to continue with his theatrical work. Unfortunately, it seems that there are no surviving shows of Don Ameche's Real Life Stories. My presentation on Don Ameche has focused on his radio career. His career on film, the stage, and on television are each worthy of a presentation of their own. But Don Ameche recognized what radio had meant to his career, and I'll close by reading a quote from him as his career was flourishing. "I'm sure that without radio, I would never be where I am today. And it is also because of radio that I have never starved in show business, as many others have. I still feel I need the constant stimulation which the radio gives any actor with the public. With that in my films, they can't forget me, because if they go to a movie, there I am. And if I stay at home, I catch them via the radio. They can't possibly escape me." So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Don Ameche, and it was really interesting to do the research and to put this together, and I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Frank. That was really lovely. Great job. Wonderful choice of excerpts and clips. Does anyone have any questions for Frank?
Yes, I do.
John Reiser. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Was Don Ameche married? And you didn't say anything about his personal life.
Yeah, I did in part 1, John. You got to go back and listen to it on YouTube. Yeah, he was married to I pronounce it Honore, Honore, for 5 decades, and they had 5 children. She was not in show business. She was just a stay-at-home wife at the time.
Thank you, Frank, for a wonderful two wonderful presentations, and you gave his final thoughts. But I know that he wasn't as active in the 1960s, but apparently in the movie Trading Places, he was brought back to prominence, and I guess got an Academy Award for Cocoon, and his decency made itself clear when he got his acceptance speech, and he said how grateful he was, and it was a traditional speech. He didn't have any things to protest or be unhappy about, but he sounds like he was a very decent human being. So thank you for bringing him into focus for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, Edgar. I wanted to stick to radio. Originally, I had included a picture of Ameche and his co-star Ralph Bellamy together as the Duke brothers in Trading Places. And the interesting thing is, he was not the first choice to play the part of Mortimer Duke. Ray Milland was who they wanted, but Milland couldn't pass the physical, so they decided they went to Ameche, and Ameche got the part. And Trading Places is one of my favorite movies because the way they used Ameche and Bellamy. They weren't just there for cameo roles. They were really an integral part of that movie. And of course, it takes place in Philadelphia, which is where I'm originally from. So the backdrop and everything was, a terrific movie. And Cocoon, yeah, he won it for Best Supporting Actor. And Cher made the presentation to him of the award. And he did do some television in the 60s, mostly guest appearances, Edgar. But, his comeback was with Trading Places and Cocoon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But I'll just make one more comment. When you say about his decency, there's one scene in Trading Places where he has to use some coarse language. And John Landis, who was the director, had him do that scene 10 times before it was acceptable to him. And of course, Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis and Denholm Elliott were also in that movie. So it really, to me, is I think they've also already shown it on Turner Classic Movies because it is such a good movie.
That's just delightful. And of course, your presentation will be up on YouTube probably fairly quickly. John Abbott, I mean, he gets faster and faster getting these things posted to YouTube. And you can get to it through the club's website, if you click on the video links.
Just shows you how little of a life I've got, Wendy.
Yeah, that's what you say, but I don't buy it for a minute, John. Yes, Dennis Stevens.
Tie check, Edgar. Great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yes, the club.
Just for you, Dennis. Just for you.
We cannot survive without the tie check. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. That's your job to make sure that you keep Edgar in line. Great stuff. Well, if there are no more questions, I think it's time to bring back our own Miss Stevens and hear the results of our quizzes and I hope that most people have done well on their quizzes. So you can actually be promoted to the next grade next month.
I certainly hope so too, Wendy. Otherwise, we're going to have a very difficult conversation with a lot of families about why their children are being held back here. That's right. Now, everyone have their papers out and ready. Looks like this has been open and we had about 75% participation on the poll, but I'm going to close it. So you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ending poll. Can you see the results? Okay, got a thumbs up. I see a nod. Great. Okay. So this is our May I Have an OTR Word with You results. So you can follow along. Get your answer sheets out. Remember, I'm following along with you. I have no idea. The answer sheet is a completely separate page that I don't look at until we go over the answers. So number 1, when the crook told Richard Diamond that his partners brought the soup, what did they have? Was it Campbell's chicken noodle, Mrs. Nussbaum's matzo ball, Pasquale's escarole, or was it DuPont's explosives? Well, some of us thought it might be chicken noodle. Maybe they brought some soup. You're welcome. You weren't feeling well. Here's some soup. Most people said it was DuPont's explosives. Well, let's find out. The correct answer is D, DuPont's explosives. Soup was not soup. It was a lot of things that are going to blow up. Though depending on what kind of soup you have, it could blow up too. I don't know. Number 2. Before their home in Wistful Vista, Fibber and Molly, I almost said Flivver and Molly, at times slept in a flivver. What is a flivver? Ooh, we were kind of all over the place. Some of us said it was a pup tent. Some said a cheap boarding house. Most said C, an inexpensive car. And the majority wins. C, an inexpensive car is correct. A flivver. If you also made notes that Jack Benny only owned flivvers, give yourself a bonus point. Number 3. On Crime Classics, if a man had on derbies, what were they? We had no idea, obviously. We had no idea. I actually really hoped that it was going to be a matching cravat and pocket square, because that sounds fantastic. And now I want to find someone and say, what a fine derby you have, sir. But when would I necessarily get to use that? However, it is not D, so sorry for the 5 of you. Those who said old-fashioned ball and chain and leg irons, you're also incorrect. The majority did win on this one. It is handcuffs. Handcuffs, derbies. So if you potentially get arrested, you could say, oh, you're gonna put on the derbies on me. Because immediately when you get arrested, you turn Irish. Number 4. I can say that because I am Irish. Don't think I'm getting all like weird or something. I can say that. Jeez Louise, I can already tell there's like weird. Number 4. When you went to see a peeper, what was his profession? Whoa. First of all, don't go looking for anyone who's a peeper, okay? Don't go asking around for the peeper. It's not safe in this day and age. Hello, I'm looking for the peeper. Don't do it, children. Don't do it. Don't ask for the peeper. No, don't do it. But we also had no idea what this person did, which is probably also why we shouldn't be asking for them. Were they a photographer? Maybe. A lot of us thought they were a detective. I don't know. Were they a spy? They aren't very good at their job if they're going around with another nickname. Or were they an oculist? Frank, what's an oculist? You don't know. Okay, great.
No, I'm
Sounds
saying
like
you don't
something
know.
to do with eyes. Let's find out. If a peeper is, well, good job to the majority. It is a detective. It is a detective. Thank goodness it's not a spy, because that's just weird.
Miss Stevens?
Yes, Mr. Abbott.
Back in the old days, detectives used to work on divorce cases.
Yes.
And so they would quite often be caught peeping in the window to catch somebody in flagrante delicto. And then they picked up the name peepers.
I suppose that goes kind of along with the private eye, the eye part.
Well, the eye was for investigators. So, yeah.
Yes. We'll kind of allow it. Still, peeping, don't ask for it. Just don't do it.
And the oculist is the person who outfits you with
the glasses. Okay,
glasses.
That's what I was thinking, but
not to be confused with an ophthalmologist who also deals with eyes.
Deals with the eyeballs, not with the eyeglasses. Man, there's too
Right.
much. I don't like eyes, so anything peeping, eyes, looking, peering, windows, lenses. That's I'm out. Number 5. Gracie told George that when Jack was younger, he had been a plunger. What is a plunger? Again, we clearly had no idea. We were all over the place. Some said maybe that was a plumber's assistant. Very on the nose. Could it have been a free spender? Makes sense. A diver. Get it? The plunging in the water. Or a moocher, like Minnie the moocher. Let's find out. A plunger. Good job to them. Just squeaking out majority. B, a free spender. A free spender. A plunger, a free spender. Probably because it unstuck the thing and let it go free. I don't know. We need a linguist here. Number 6. When Horatio K. Boomer told Fibber he had a ticket for a short beer, what did he mean? A lot of people took that to mean literally a half-size glass of beer. But some of us thought, well, it could be a weak beer, a cheap beer, or a free beer. In fact, a short beer is, I knew this one. I don't know if I should be proud of that or not, but it is a weak beer. I did know that one. Yay. It's a weak beer. It's a short beer. Doesn't mean it's a little glass, just means that it's not going to get you very far in life. So that is B. B is correct. Number 7. Axford was always going to catch the Green Hornet, calling him a scalpeen. Don't call people a scalpeen, okay? Don't do it. It will get you sent to the principal's office. That is his distortion of the word rapscallion. Exactly what was he calling the Hornet? Nobody thought he was calling him a dangerous person, but we were split between a common crook, a rascal, and a rogue evenly. We were evenly split between those three. That's kind of hilarious. And the correct answer is, oh, you get a freebie here. Frank gave you a freebie. The correct answer is B, a rascal, but rogue is also acceptable. So if you put B or D, you get correct. You are correct. But if you said common crook, no points for you. So B or D are the only acceptable answers. A rascal or rogue. Number 8. When Titus Moody said he needed to take a glim with him to his barn, what did he actually need? Nobody thought a match, but everybody thought maybe a candle, a flashlight, or a lantern. Obviously, he needed to be able to see where he was going. What was a glim, however? 4 people got it correct. It's a candle. A glim is a candle. A candle. All right, number 9. If you took away the crook's gat, what have you taken away from him? His sap?
You know what a sap is?
No, it's like sap from a tree. No.
No. A sap is a heavy. It's
like a blackjack.
Yeah.
Yes.
Blackjack.
Very good.
It's something you hit people over the heads with. It's heavy, and it.
So I need one, is what you're telling me.
You
can Wendy, is that a reference to a former life that you have this knowledge?
Love it.
I guess I read a lot of books that involve sacks and handcuffs and rapscallions and
not his sap, not his girl, not his shiv, but his gun, short for his Gatling gun. D, sorry for those who are going by the letters D. And the last one, tried to throw us at a curveball and throw us into like practically modern television. All of a sudden I didn't know where I was. Mr. Peterman employed Elaine on Seinfeld. What? Where are we? What decade is it? But if you were looking for a Peterman in old time radio, what are you actually looking for? One of these people, we presume. A hitman? Some of us said yes. A second story man? I really want to know what that is.
A burglar.
Maybe a con man? But most of us said a safecracker, and the majority wins. A safecracker is correct. Safecracker is correct. Second story man, Frank, tell us.
Burglar. It's a burglar.
Oh, just like the second story.
Yeah.
They climb up on the outside of the building.
I was really hoping it was someone who came up with the second story. Like, oh no, I got the real story for you. I had a whole thing going in my head. It was really exciting. Well,
And what this says is I must listen to too much old time radio.
I was going to say, Sally, you need to listen to more old time radio to get some of this terminology. But I want to thank Frank for enriching our vocabularies.
I still got 7 correct. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good girl.
Thank you very much.
I
So
felt like
that
this
was an excellent quiz, Frank. That was very fun. That was a
Very
fun
well
quiz.
done. A nice mix.
Liked it a lot.
This was Frank's version of Reader's Digest.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing the poll, and I can't return my power, which is great. But
I particularly enjoyed the first question's possible answers with the chicken noodle soup and the matzo ball soup and that type of thing. I'm into soup. What can I say? Thank you, Frank, for your ingenuity, and Sally for the flawless, as always, delivery of our quiz. And that concludes our the main part of our program. I will stop the recording, and then we can move to our business meeting. So recording.